Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app to your smartphone so you can stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. We can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today, and it's a high honor to welcome back to the program a melodic improviser who grew up going to the Blue Cornet, seeing Miles Davis giving him dirty looks, and ultimately, collaborating with the great Gil Scott-Heron, turning It's Your World. That was a track called Possum Slim, and he continues to create constantly today. Increasing his family, coming out with new songs, working with younger cats to increase musical vocabulary. It's the whole gambit. Brian Jackson, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. It's nice to be back. I just want to clarify, it was Miles Davis who was giving me the dirty look.
No, if I said wrong, then Miles was giving you the dirty look, man. I'm very clear about that.
That's way more likely.
Did you?
I was too scared to give him any kind of look.
I mean, was there another cat that had not the same vibe, but was as intimidating when you would go see them play?
Oh, I mean, there were a lot of. I mean, the cats that grew up around that time period, man, they were hardcore. The thing about it is that once you got past that veneer, that street vibe, they were like really street. They were really sweet guys, and I mean there were a lot of guys like that, like Mingus, and Max Roach, people I had met, who maybe in some people might have looked at it and said, oh man, that's a really scary dude, but in and they were. But they could also, be very, very supportive, and they are known for that, particularly with their band members.
Why? Let me ask you something. I mean, this is so interesting. I mean, you have so much stuff going down today. A cop sees a black person running the other way. He immediately takes out his gun and shoots them. Some people say they're scared. They're calling firefighters who are on the job that are black. They're being getting the police called on them, and it all has to do with fear and being scared. And yet, you're saying that these guys were scary.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were. First of all, they were serious,
right?
And a serious person who is. Who's on top of their game, who is known for not taking any crap off of anybody. Is like they can be a bit intimidating. And yeah, I mean more so than I was just a kid. I was 16 years old, and so any serious guy that was kind of an authority figure for me in terms of his stature in the community and his reputation was a bit intimidating to me. Maybe scary wasn't the right word, but they were certainly intimidating to me. Like so was my best friend Ralph's father, known for their accomplishments and their sense of pride and dignity were always intimidating at first, but in the end. If you got to know them, or if you got past that and were able to speak to them, you could see that, they were still scary as hell.
Can you? I mean, before I'm just trying to get. I mean, the going to the Blue Cornet. I mean, did you have the gall at a certain point to? I mean, at Bob City, cats would. Miles would take his band out there, and there'd be cats who would, go up on the bandstand and play drums. And if they weren't cutting it, the band would just walk off the stage. But did you have that when you got to a certain, even before you met Gil or went to Lincoln or anything? Did you Did you go up on the bandstand with anybody and try to swing?
I must have been maybe 14 or 15, and they used to have an open jam night at Slugs down in the Bowery in New York, and I went down there once or twice, and I remember George Coleman being on the bandstand. I remember Papa Joe Jones was on the bandstand.
Papa Joe, Joe,
yeah, Reggie Workman. Reggie Workman, and I took a swing. I took a swing. I didn't get kicked off.
Wow!
So, that was encouraging. Yeah, that was encouraging. I think they took it easy on me. We did something like maybe impressions, or like so what, or something all blues.
Yeah, right.
I think they really took it easy on me. I guess they could see how nervous I was. But no, and plus I picked my spot. I wasn't going to go up there when they were doing giant steps or something. I took my best. I counted my odds and I went up there when I thought I could handle it.
Wow. Well, we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I don't expect you to know who this is, but I am fascinated with the content, and I want you to riff on it when we come back, all right?
Okay.
Well, really it was in New Orleans with getting to know some of the people who were involved with the Mardi Gras Indians and understanding how we all had Native American heritage and and how it came from the Africans coming over here and then getting together with the Native Americans because both being kind of in the same boat with the Europeans, and so the some of the African cultural elements were kept alive along with some of the Native American elements. And
which elements were kept alive?
Spiritual and musical, and just spiritual and cultural. Period.
Someone was saying,
and the music was one of the greatest things.
Something. I just want to be clear. You were aware from your ancestor, from your family. One thing that's interesting for cats like me is like there were black people in the Americas before diaspora, right? It just got a lot more when the slave trade took over. But it wasn't like
right.
It wasn't like slaves showed up and all of a sudden they were like, yeah, we're going to be pals with the Native Americans. They had already been collaborating for many years before, right? I mean, can you share a story of how far back that lineage goes? Because again, in the books, it's like, oh yeah, the slave trade occurred, and then all of a sudden slaves showed up in America. Well, there were plenty of black people here before that.
Right, but history doesn't. Like the history that's taught in the school system doesn't touch on that.
This is why I do my show.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like there was there's a book, man. Let me tell you about this book. A woman by the name of Lillian Smith wrote a book called Killers of the Dream.
Let me write this down. All right.
And you should definitely check that out. It's to look at. It was written by a white woman in the South in the 30s, and it was banned. I got my first copy of it from my great aunt, who was the help for a white family for a couple of generations, and they gave her the book. And to this day, you won't find it on the shelf in a bookstore anywhere, but you can order it. Amazon and a couple other people have it, and it's a look at sexism and racism in the South and the kind of creation of the myth of white supremacy. And it's really interesting, informative look, and so.
Could you talk about one profound thing specifically about this myth of white supremacy?
One thing was that for the people who were, immigrants from Europe, uneducated, who had nothing and didn't know anything and were given land to farm, and they were Christians, Well, when they were told that, well, okay, we can give you some folks from Africa to work for you, in order for them to be able to accept the idea of enslaving another person, they had to feel that that person wasn't really a person like them. That he wasn't quite an animal, but wasn't quite a human either.
Right, it was subhuman in some way. Subhuman.
Yeah. So it was all right to not treat them as a Christian because they had no souls. Right, that was one of the things they said.
Wow.
That the African savages and the Indian savages didn't have souls, because if they had souls, their skin would be white.
Well, that was my first interview with the late great tenor horn player Charles Neville. Did you ever cross paths with Charlie?
I did not. No, I did not. But I'm certainly well aware of the Neville brothers and the Meters.
Of course,
their contribution to American music.
Can you can you talk about the myth of white supremacy and how you and Gil took that on? I think that right now we are at a time, I don't know, I just feel like you have carved out a path for yourself and your family that is there is liberation. I mean, there's a path, but there's so many people that have been through this dogma, have been indoctrinated to believe in this myth of white supremacy. And I wasn't sure, even aside from the story he told, is there a song that you guys talked about, or how early in your life were you given materials to get hip to this stuff? I mean, how did it work for Brian Jackson?
I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened. And but before I do that, I got to get the name of that book again. What was it?
It was called Killers of a Dream. You can get it on Amazon.
Killers of a Dream. Okay, thank you. So how I came across the concept was through another book that I read quite early. It was a book that my mom gave to me, actually, and it was called A People's History of the United States, by Howard Zinn.
Howard Zinn, yeah.
And the thing about one of the most interesting parts, there are 2 or 3 key parts of that book that will change one's life when they read it. One was the accounting by Christopher Columbus himself of how he rolled up on the natives in Hispaniola, which it was called at the time, with their swords drawn. They saw these people coming toward the beach, and they drew their swords. And in his accounts, he writes, okay, so when we drew our swords, they looked at them and they took their finger and they touched the end of it, puncturing their finger and causing it to bleed. Right. And his next sentence was something like, and I paraphrase, it's going to be a piece of cake to get rid of these guys. They don't even know what it's for. Looked at their chains and looked at their jewelry that was all obviously made out of gold, and with that same sword, he threatened to cut off their heads and the heads of their families if they didn't lead them to where all that gold was.
Oh man!
So that was the first thing. The second, I'm going to skip ahead to the third thing.
Can I just before you go to the third thing, just for the audience out there who will either listening now or when this goes up online, what is the major takeaway from that? Just barbarism, just savagery, just soullessness?
The major take is that, first of all, we shouldn't be celebrating the barbarism of someone like this.
Right.
Right. I mean,
they're not a hero. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the beginning. I mean, in many ways, it was probably one of the earliest examples of what was to come in terms of the dehumanization of so many people, Of course, there have been wars, there have been slavery, before, but I don't think that. Here's what I take away from it. What I take away from it, Jake, is that right now in America, there's a lot of talk about getting rid of dangerous immigrants, and in my opinion, that dialogue should have happened in 1492.
Absolutely, dude. That's right.
Okay, so that's my takeaway from that.
I mean, but that's how. I mean, how much have we regressed? Really? I mean, it's insane. I mean, that was the other thing that Charlie said that stuck out. When immigrants came, as uneducated as they were, and even though they were, well, I don't even take that as an excuse. I mean, but just being dumb or when immigrants, European immigrants came,
that's not malicious in and of itself. Yeah.
But I mean, no, but I mean, when of course they were European immigrants, which is different from Latin America, South America, but they were given land. They weren't, it was just like,
that's right.
What the hell is going on? Anyway, so you're right. So we're about, I don't know, 500.
And here's the other thing.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. When we talk about immigrants, how many people have actually backtracked a little bit to remember that the places that we are trying to keep people from, the borders that we are trying to keep people from crossing, did not exist originally.
Absolutely.
Okay? We created those borders once we stole the land of the people who were trying to get on the other side.
Well, I mean, the Gadsden Purchase of Arizona, 1850. I mean, it's.
The Spanish-American War. I mean, the Louisiana Purchase. It goes on and on and on. How could they even be considered people who are trying to go to somewhere they don't belong?
Go to jump to the third. Go to the third part. You were going to go to three.
Yeah, number 3 is the part that, and I'll give you the takeaway later. But number 3 is the whole accounting of the beginning of unionism. Okay, the beginning of workers demanding some type of rights as far as how much they work, as the matter of the conditions from which they work, related to the amount that they are paid or not paid, the minimum age requirements that did not exist. I mean, children were put to work.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was no requirement for a child to go to school at any point. If their family needed money and the kid could do a repetitive procedure at a factory, that's what he was going to do. And forget about whether or not there was proper ventilation or whether there was food or whatever. He would work, because if he didn't work, their family would perish. Okay, so everybody worked. And then there was a huge fire where a lot of children died in one of the factories. And it seemed as though it was the last straw. And people got together and said, this is too much. They're treating us like animals. Where we heard that before, and
absolutely,
and they're getting away with it. And I said, you know what? We are going to do something that you're not going to like. We are not going to work. Okay, so you're not going to get whatever it is that you're trying to produce. You're not going to get it produced until you respond to us and our needs. Okay, and what happened? You think, well, they'd say, oh, well, maybe we should listen. No, that's not what happened. They brought in other people to shoot them down like dogs. To shoot them down.
But what can we get? Are we talking like the 1920s? What years are we in?
Yeah, we're talking about the 1920s. Correct.
Got it.
The very beginning of the fight for justice for workers, and they want to call, whatever they want to call that now, because at the time they called it socialism, and that became it became one of those buzzwords that American politicians are so fond of creating to create a distorted view, of the people and their issues. So, the first thing they said was, "Oh, they're socialists," which, AKA, they're communists, AKA, they're un-American.
Exactly. Yeah. My God. Did you call it humanism? Is that what you called it at first?
I didn't call it anything, man. I just called it justice. I just said being treated fairly.
And you're telling me that they opened fire and killed these protesters.
They killed them. Everything they could. They beat the hell out of them. When they tried to strike. Oh yeah, I mean, they brought in the henchmen to do a number on anybody who protested. And obviously, if you protest, number one, right away you lost your job. Okay. So all those people were, now they were basically, what were they going to do for a living? And so they had to make a choice. That knowing that they will definitely lose their job, that they will probably be severely beaten, that they will possibly lose their lives, that their families will not have a way to survive, okay, without their help. They did it anyway because it was that important. And so when we look at the beginnings of what is my takeaway from that? Right. Okay, my takeaway from that is that when it's just like in a song. The lyrics of a song that we did called "We Almost Lost Detroit." And there's a line in that song that says, "When it comes to people's safety, money wins out every time." And it's just not just safety, but it's anything that benefits anyone other than those who stand to gain the profit. So that's that was my takeaway, and the other takeaway was that let's look at the situation here. Most of these workers that I'm talking about, they were not black, they were not they were not, quote, literally slaves. They were white people. They were workers. Okay, and they were being treated like this by other white people. So for us to, let's not get into this goes kind of back to, this is going to go back to our second issue.
Good. Oh, this is fantastic. Yeah, go. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Okay, because what does it show? It shows that those who in power, they don't care. Whatever they tell you, they don't care about your color either. They don't care about that. They just care about what you can do for them. How can you generate a profit for them? And if you get in the way of that, okay, you will be shot down like a dog, just like anybody else of any other color. And this is what these Trumpists and all of these kinds of people who feel that they are superior because of their skin color, or because of their heritage somehow, fail to understand. Okay, this would be a different country.
Can you go back? Well, the Skype signal dropped. You said they don't understand.
They don't understand that without that, that. Okay, they don't understand that they're just as much pawns, as the next man, as anybody else. Okay, that without their support, this would be a different country.
I mean, have you got? This is kind of an interesting question. I look at these Trumpists and I say they have this ignorant pride where they can't now step back and say, I made a mistake voting for somebody, or I can't be analytical, or I don't have any introspection. Is there any time in your life where you were blinded from your introspection, where you were able to step back as an example to these people and say, not even that I made a mistake, it was just I really didn't, I was not true to myself, and I was played. I mean, these people are, we're headed towards a very, very dangerous place because of the fact of this insanity. I mean, that's the definition of insanity. You're repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. These people are voting for Trump, and I don't think they could ever, in their most honest, I have people in my family like this too, in their most honest moments where they could actually even admit that the guy is very ill and very, very insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. Pride is a difficult emotion to handle. It's much easier in retrospect, but while it's nobody wants to be wrong. Let's face it. So obviously they believe they're right. And if they have the media telling them that they're right, if they have their leaders telling them that they're right, how could they be wrong? How could they be wrong about anything?
I mean,
and so it's all about who you hear and who you listen to. And who do you listen to? You listen to the people you are guided to listen to. It's all about education, man. It all goes back to education.
I will say, I mean, now that I've tapped into like these, I will say it's about education, Brian, but I will say I don't know how cats, we're not being taught in the school systems, my kids, your kids, we're not being taught education. We're being taught a white Anglo view of history. So you can say education. People are going to say, "Oh yeah, my kids are in school. They're going to college. That's education." But it's about
the education I mean.
No,
the education I'm talking about is the cultivation of intelligence, the cultivation of the ability to ascertain the truth of something, through analysis, through facts.
And that's part of it is how to think. Yeah, it's about how to think and not what to think. I mean, that was prevalent.
Exactly.
How did you learn? You just were very poetic there about deciphering things through accumulation. Can you give us some examples of outside of the academy where, I mean, you told me the story the first time about being bussed and, these guys from Holy Innocents would come down and then, I'm talking outside of school. How did you accumulate knowledge?
I've had a lot of friends, and I can't think of any enemies, and in retrospect in my life, I can't tell you that they were all any race or religion or sex.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Or gender. And so from this, I've come to understand, okay, that it's the character of an individual, okay, that you need to pay attention to. And ultimately, the character of yourself. Okay? Once we begin to focus on that, we automatically become 100%, or maybe 90% less judgmental. Because we realize that we cannot even uphold the standards that we believe should be upheld.
Absolutely.
Well, how can we expect that of anyone else? If you're trying to evaluate your relationship or the positivity of your relationship with another individual or the benefit of your relationship with another individual, what does their race or belief system or age or gender preference have anything to do with that? It doesn't, because you can have positive and negative. You can have negative experiences with anybody, with anybody, including your own family members, including those closest with you. And then you can experience random acts of kindness from absolute strangers.
I dig. No, it's happening for me right now. It's happening in everybody's life.
Exactly.
Why can't people? Why is it so? Is it pride? Is it greed? What are the things that prevent people from a large minority of people being able to not just have a dialogue like me and you are having, but truly feel these thoughts? I mean, what is it?
It's our exposure to
cultural bias.
Not just, but I mean, cultural bias is taught, within society.
Exactly.
I mean, media is. I love how media is presents itself as the arbiter of truth, as the as the one element within our society that cannot waver from the truth. Nevertheless, okay, they give us two sides of everything. In fact, there's always a bit of truth in every lie, in order for it to be effective.
That's true. Yep.
Okay, and the media are masters at that. Okay, because what is their goal? Is their goal to tell us the truth, or is it their goal to make us click that link or buy that product or have a belief system that is beneficial for the politicians and the other people who are trying to sell us things? Okay, I mean it's not even a question; it's a rhetorical question. I mean, those of us who can see this know that this has been happening for years. I mean, I studied media arts in school, all right, and the nephew of Sigmund Freud was a man by the name of Edward Bernays. Okay, and Edward Bernays wrote a book dealing with the engineering of consent. And what that whole idea, the whole concept of that was that if you could get into people's minds, and you could find out what it is, their insecurities, their fears, etc. If you could find out, like, as a whole, as a group, as a society, what those hot buttons were, you could sell them anything by just playing on their weaknesses.
That was this. Is this cat's study, or was this Freud's study? Bernays. Okay.
This was Edward Bernays.
Bernays study.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bernays. And
lo and behold,
this became this became the religion of Madison Avenue. And then you started seeing these ads in the 50s when I was growing up. I started seeing these ads. Yeah, at first, when I was little, I remember seeing ads, and it just said, this product is better than that product. This product is the best product, and that's how they would sell it. And then all of a sudden, the switch kind of that. If you buy this product, you'll feel like this, if you get this product. You see the difference. They weren't selling products anymore. They were selling emotions and linking them to their product.
Yeah, because I was going to say that the thing. Go ahead.
Like for instance, like a deodorant. I actually remember these commercials where some poor teenage guy with a bunch of zits all over his face, he's like, he's got some deodorant on, and it's not where you can see the moisture, building up under his arm. He's like horrified, and he's so ashamed. Yeah, this is the commercial. And some girl that he liked, a bunch of girls are laughing at him, and this is this is how they sold those deodorants and those antiperspirants.
It's not even, and just to piggyback on what you said about the media construct in this country, I mean, it's more than just clicking on a link, reading an article, buying a product. It is, they have turned into, it's almost like electric shock therapy. They want to get a rise out of you, especially if it's, something like, you have a complete arm of, like Fox News. I mean, they're just throwing bombs everywhere because the people because they want to get people's emotions riled up, because then you're not thinking rationally.
That's it. And once you don't think rationally, you are open for any type of suggestion. It's almost like being in a hypnotic state.
Well, I mean, it's what you talked about with those worker labor rights things, when the cats that were getting slaughtered were white cats. They were working in the jobs. It doesn't compute. Yeah. And so that's okay.
I mean, the majority of them. I mean, there were some black. Obviously, there were some black cats in there too. But the majority of them. In fact, to the companies, that were hiring these folks, it didn't make any difference whatsoever. It made no difference. So that kind of brings us to the second one that I skipped over. Okay, so this is the big one for me.
Good.
All right, and this is it. Okay, when the owners of the plantations, decided that this was the way that they were going to make their money. They were going to be farmers, and they were going to have thousands of acres of land. But who to work all of that? They couldn't work it by themselves. Okay, and they couldn't hire their next door neighbor, because their next door neighbor was also a wealthy aristocrat.
Right.
So who do they get to work? Well, the closest people to them were the lower class whites. The ones who weren't aristocrats. Who needed a job. So get them to work. Put them to work. Put them to work on those fields. All right. Problem number one. The sun was blistering hot. Okay, they didn't have sunblock back then. Okay, and they were just not suited for working under the hot sun for so long. Okay, I mean, coming from the climate that they came from, they were not used to anything like the sweltering, blistering heats that they were subjected to work in the cotton fields and tobacco fields and the rice paddies. So there was a problem. Okay, they were dying. They were dying off. They couldn't make it. They just couldn't make it. All right. So look around some more. Who do we have? The Native Americans. Yeah, let's get the Indians to do it. They're used to the weather, and we got them under our thumb right now. So let's do it. So they bring the Native Americans in. Only one problem. Okay. Every tree was a safe house for a Native American. Every hill, every mountain, okay, every trench was a safe house for those Native Americans in that area who knew that land. I mean, this was their land. They knew it. They understood it. They communed with it. They communicated with it. You could not keep them there. Okay? They knew where to hide. They were into guerrilla warfare before America didn't learn really about guerrilla warfare until it went to
Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah. Okay, so that wasn't going to work. But there was another thing. Guys over in Europe, man, were shipping these guys from Africa. They were shipping slaves over from Africa, and they were making a fortune down in the islands, down in the Caribbean, and in South America. They were making a fortune. Why can't we do that? Let's do it. Let's get these Africans in these ships over here and start working them. Okay, because here's the thing. Get them. They're all from different areas. They speak different languages, different tongues, and different dialect. dialects. Okay, they're well suited for the heat. Okay, and they have no idea where they are. Perfect. Let's get them. So, slave trade began. They started shipping over the slaves to work, the Africans to work the fields. But there was a crossover. There was a time where forget the Indians, they were gone.
Right.
Okay, they were out. But there was a time when the European indentured, what they called indentured servants, okay, were also working alongside the African servants. Okay, and the reason I say what we have to understand is that indentured servitude meant that, okay, yeah, you weren't getting paid, okay, to do the job, but there were two things that could happen to an indentured servant that would not generally happen to a slave. First of all, an indentured servant worked for a certain period of time. Okay, it was like a prison sentence. After your time was up, you were free. Okay, and the other thing is that once you were free, your children, there was no stigma attached to being the child of an indentured servant. Okay, because who knew? Nobody could really tell. There was no way of telling. Okay, however, as an African servant, as an African slave, there was no possibility of you gaining your freedom under ordinary circumstances. And second of all, your children looked like you. So it was common knowledge that you had to have not come from here, and you have not come from, you were obviously a descendant of an African.
Right.
Who at some point was a slave. So you were always marked with that just by your appearance. So it's very easy to keep track of. They were very easy to keep track of. And because they were easy to keep track of, they were also easy to compartmentalize. Okay. Socially as well as physically. So what happened? The indentured servants and the slaves were working on these plantations for these rich, wealthy aristocrats. I think he said that there were maybe 200, like late in the 18th century into the early 19th century. There weren't that many, in other words. Okay,
right.
And they were wealthy beyond belief already, and they were getting to be more wealthy because of the crops that they were growing. They were both being treated very poorly. Okay. So much so that they used to talk about it. They used to get together and say, hey, wait a minute. Hold on just a minute, okay? They're doing the same thing to us. All right? Maybe you're in the house, or maybe you're in the field or whatever, but you know what? These guys have got their foot on our back, and we need to take our freedom back. And they got together and they started organizing against these wealthy landowners. Okay? It was at that point that there had to be a strategy, because out of the few rebellions, the few interracial rebellions that occurred, it became obvious to the wealthy aristocrat, that they were going to have to divide and conquer. They were going to have to set indentured servants from the African. Okay.
I just want to be clear. In my own, so indentured servants could not include anybody that came via diaspora. These were white.
It could, but basically, I'm sure under extraordinary circumstances, one could become an indentured servant and be an African descendant of an African.
Right.
Right. But that was primarily a role that had been fulfilled by Europeans who had been either were in a class that was needy, or that was dependent on the upper class.
I got it. Yeah.
They were convicted of some type of crime. This is my understanding.
And so these aristocrats they divided them, right? Divide and conquer.
They were able to. Yeah, I mean, so how do you do that? I mean, what does that look like in a real world situation? What if you want to divide two people who are in the same basically the same class? How do you do it? You have to find something. You have to find a dividing point. And the most obvious point was color. The most obvious point was physical appearance.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you look at an African, you can tell he's got a different skin color, he's got a different nose, he's got different hair, you know. And then the white indentured servant, they have different eyes, they have different nose, they have different hair, they have different skin color. Okay? So this was the most obvious thing to use as a dividing point. Now, how can you amplify that division? Well, let's see. The indentured servants, they look just like the aristocrats.
Right. Give them some land. They'll be fine after 6 years of hard work.
Exactly. Give them
freedom,
some land, and tell them, you know what? You're with us, okay? I know you think that you're together with these Africans over here, but look at yourself and look at me, okay? You are me, okay? You can be me if you work hard enough. If you keep your nose to the grindstone, you can be me because you already look like me. All you have to do is have some of my money. You can do it, and I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you some love. I'm going to help you out, you know. But if you associate with those guys, they're going to bring you down. They're going to bring you down because they're not like me, and they're not like you. And they drove that wedge between those workers. All right. This, as I understood it when I read Howard Zinn's book, this is the beginning of the myth of white superiority.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
It's a method of controlling people. Make one group of people think they're better than the other group of people. And they will always do what you say. They'll always follow you because you make them feel good about themselves. They're still poor. They're still poor as hell, Jake. But you made them feel a little bit better because they think, well, I'm poor, but at least I'm not like them. But what the hell does that mean? What does that mean? You're still poor, but you're not like them. Yes, you are. You're poor. You're exactly like them.
Right. No, I mean it's just, and it's like still. I'm out with this realtor last night who helped me buy a house, and he, you know, he's in his late 60s, early 70s, and he's like, why does Trump feel the need to have to run? He's 71 years old. He wants to make this country great. You know, he was, and now listening to this indentured servant, it's more like you have this 71-year-old white aristocrat telling other whites that they're great and we're going to make America great again. And that's and with the demographics changing now more than ever, it's the same thing that you're talking about. It's the same thing that's going on, right? And this guy who is not hurting financially and is not a bad guy, you know, I mean, but it's like, actually, you know, it's not about Trump wanting to make the country great again. It's to make sure that when he's done, the levers and the powers and the wedge things that you talked about will be continually slanted towards the angle of white superiority, the myth of white supremacy. It's really pretty remarkable, and I wonder. I just think that I long for the day when I don't even know if it'll be politicians, but people can come along and speak boldly about this stuff. We had one civil rights movement with great leaders. They were all murdered.
Yes.
I mean, that's the other part of it. I mean, how deflating is it? You lose.
It's frightening to be,
So it's like, we've already learned that if you actually speak out to the truth, and you might be in positions of power, you're still going to get knocked off. You're right.
Yeah, or if not knocked off, your reputation impugned. Some one way or another. I don't think they really even have to kill people anymore. I mean, maybe just as a touch. Just as a nice touch. But in reality, it's so easy to destroy one's character that it's done all the time. I mean, and if you're an enemy, you can be accused of just about anything without proof.
I have another.
And
go ahead.
It just kind of takes away, and it's a great tool because that in itself takes away from the true stories of situations that demonstrate the lack of character of certain people.
Well, that's what you were talking about too. Is that it's the internal character of each individual. How do you come down on it? I mean, when you meet your maker, how are you going to, settle that? Truly.
Yeah. Exactly.
I have another another voice. Maybe you will get it. Maybe you won't. Again, the content is essential. So let's take a listen to it. We'll come back.
Number one person to talk about is Toussaint Louverture, who overthrew the French in Haiti. Okay, so here you have some barefooted, no clothes wearing, enslaved people who had still retained their African spiritualism and their warriorship, who would not be denied, and they went up against the French, and of course you must realize that voodoo, hoodoo, and all of that, a lot of that came from Haiti to New Orleans.
Right,
okay,
right.
And that was one of the ways that Toussaint Louverture overthrew the French. He used psychology. He used spiritualism. He used the knife, the gun, and then the rocks, the stones, the dirt, the trees, whatever he could to fight the oppression that he faced. Well, the same thing happened here when that happened in the Caribbean. It sent a ripple through all of slaveholding America and anywhere else, the Caribbean, the West Indies. It struck fear into the hearts of those people who owned slaves. Okay, and as time went on, with the slaves, say in Place Congo or Congo Square, as time went on, whites became increasingly suspicious and afraid of the price. There was a huge revolt here where not only enslaved people, but even some plantation owners joined the slaves, white plantation owners, joined the slave revolt to try to squelch it. Okay, so I think that had a lot to do with the demise of Congo Square. It was fear. Let me tell you something else.
Go ahead.
Let me tell you something really
also, listen, I want to tell you,
about,
speak like this into the phone, because when you go on speaker, it's very hard to hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I like to hear your voice right up on the phone. Yeah,
you probably can hear me better now.
Now you sound good.
Yeah. So listen, every day that the enslaved people went to Congo Square on the weekend or Sunday or whatever, they had a signal when they had to go back to their respective plantation or home. And you know what the signal was?
No.
It was a cannon. That was the signal to end your day, your pleasure, your joy. You hear a cannon. Bam. Time to go. It's just that. Just that fact lets you know how severe this slave thing was. That you were signaled to flee, and get back to where you needed to be post haste.
All right, Mr. Jackson, you have any idea who that is?
It's
a guy.
Allen?
It was the great percussionist Bill Summers.
Ah, yes.
And I have a lot of things running through my head, but the one thing I really want to talk to you, I wanted to ask you about is what he talked about, Toussaint Louverture, the idea of the spiritualism and the language and the warrior mentality of the drum. And I listened to melodic improvisation today. I hate the word jazz. I don't even know what people don't even know what that word means anymore.
Exactly.
But I hear a very classicalized version of the music that you played and all the heroes that we opened talking about, the Mingus music and all. My question for you is this. Has this country always had, it's going to sound ridiculous to some people, but not to you. I mean, have we always had a mistrust of the drum and, more importantly, rhythm in this country?
Wow, that's a deep question.
Well, no, I'm thinking about writing a book about it. So that's why I want to get you on the right.
In fact, it almost sounds like a rhetorical question.
I know, but it's like, what it is? I just want to be clear, though.
I think you answered the question.
Well, no, but I mean, here's the thing. It was like
the question.
No, here's the thing. Once you move on, you talked about Papa Joe, Philly Joe, Elvin, Max Roach. These guys were creating all this new vocabulary. So there was this portal or vortex when it wasn't intimidating. I mean, I'm just going through history here, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, really, I mean, you get, Charlie Neville, he told me, if a slave got caught with a drum, you'd have your hands cut off. What was your understanding of
Congo Square?
Yeah.
Okay. So in West Africa, there is a drum called the talking drum, and it's not just a name for the drum. It's not just because the drum sounds like it's talking. Okay, it's actually a drum that can create sounds that can create phonemes that create words, so that the drum can actually be used to communicate thoughts and ideas to other individuals. Mm-hmm. This is something that music doesn't really, aside from this example, I don't know of any other. Okay, but the talking drum could actually communicate concepts and ideas because there were words being created by the sounds of the drum. The way the mouth forms vowels and consonants, the talking drum did the same thing.
Right.
And what a valuable tool before we had cell phones, before we had telephones of any kind, before we had telephone. There was an instrument that people could use to express ideas and thoughts. And this was a dangerous, dangerous tool in the hands of people who were attempting to regain their freedom by any means necessary. And this was another aspect of the book. Rebellions there were on these plantations. It happened all the time.
It did.
In our history books, I distinctly recall seeing pictures of slaves laughing, playing the banjo, dancing, sitting on tree stumps, having a great time.
Huh.
You know, like nobody, people, I mean, it probably actually did even tell us, you know, that the slaves had a good life.
They were the interpretation from the book is that they're just having the time of their lives. Unbelievable.
Time of their lives.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in this great new country that civilized them. And so, obviously, that the concept that, you there, Jake?
I'm here, babe. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and so obviously the concept of rebellion did not fit in with that with that dialogue. So there were no mentions of the. Oh, I think there was one, but I think it happened later when they talked about John Brown.
Can you talk about that?
The John Brown rebellion. So John Brown was a white man who was an abolitionist. He was an abolitionist, which meant that he was against slavery, and he did everything in his power to organize and get people together to rebel against the plantations. He wanted to have an all-out war against all of the plantation owners, and he succeeded. He did pretty well. You know, I mean, he didn't succeed in abolishing slavery, but he gave his life to it.
Absolutely.
It was his life work, you know. And so we heard about John Brown, but we didn't know anything about Gabriel Prosser. We didn't know anything about Denmark Vesey. We certainly didn't know anything about Toussaint Louverture. I don't even think that we knew about Harriet Tubman. We didn't know about, you know, we didn't know anything about any of those people. We heard about John Brown. Why? Well, of course, you know, because John Brown was a white man.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So he had the right. He had the right to be outraged by slavery. But what would it have said if we had known that there were actually many thousands, maybe, of leaders who came up through the plantation to organize the folks? Then it meant that we were the children of those people. That we had the spirit of rebellion still within us, still inside of us. That we had a right to and kind of a responsibility to continue to fight against the injustice that was perpetrated against us. No, that was the wrong message to be sending out to us.
Meg, you're nailing it, dude. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's okay for a white guy, but the idea that there could actually be human beings from Africa that could be leaders and not subhuman is unacceptable.
It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. It goes against the whole dialogue of how happy we were to be here. So, yeah, they couldn't include that in the history books. And I don't even think it was that deep. I mean, in some ways, I think that maybe even the people who wrote the history books didn't even know about it. You know, but they didn't care. You know, it wasn't like they looked to find out like all of the things that happened among black people. It's not like they went and studied the great civilizations of Africa. They had no idea about any of that, and they didn't care. They didn't think it existed, and they didn't care. It wouldn't have cared even if they did know. You know, because it was all about learning about their history. They were there to preserve their history, which is natural. You know, you want to preserve the history of your own families and your own tribe. I get that. But when we sought to do that, it wasn't natural. It was rebellious. You know, it was hateful.
These savages.
And this is something that we had to put up with in the 60s. Well, all we were talking about was black empowerment, okay, and self-knowledge. And this, for this, we were called hateful. That we didn't accept the stories that were being fed to us. The stories such as, well, you have no history, okay? There are no important people in your history. You know, you never had a civilization. You never had sciences. You never had arts. So for us to rebel against that, which were actually blatant lies, was hateful.
We've been cooking here for over an hour. There's two things I wanted to ask you about before we wrap up. Is did you and Gil have experience? I mean, he wrote a song about it. You played piano. Did you guys have run-ins when you were touring the South with the Klan?
No, the only time that we had a run-ins with the Klan was when we were at Lincoln University before we started touring. When it was an all-male school, Lincoln University went co-ed, like I think about a year before I got there, 68. 69 I got there, and I think it was a year before that, serendipitously.
Yeah, right. The women came in. Yeah, so just serendipity reigns supreme.
So they used to go around they still were doing it. But the Klan, there was a place called Rising Sun, Maryland. I just passed by this place on my way.
Wow.
It's off of 95 south. And there used to be the annual, used to hold the Grand Duke Wizard or whatever the hell his name is, you know, and his whole brethren down there used to have their annual Klan meetings in Rising Sun, Maryland. And I guess maybe when they had a couple of cases of beers, you know, they would come around Lincoln and like shoot out the windows, you know, driving around in the cars, whooping and hollering and like shooting at the dormitories. And I don't know. I'm sure that people talked about doing something about it. I'm sure they did. I don't know what happened. I refuse to believe that nothing happened. In fact, I'm sure that things happened. Okay, I'm sure that that all of the young black men at Lincoln University did not just sit idly by and let that happen. I can guarantee you that.
You know, I was going to say because like I was talking to piano player Mike Knock, and he was on the road with Yusef Lateef, and they wound up in, you know, again, not maybe just, you know, these weren't necessarily, you know, identified as Klan, but you know, this was a back road town. Yusef's band, Johnny Coles was on trumpet. He kind of had a pigmentation issue. You know, everybody was like, they all looked like freaks. You know, I mean, they were all just like, you know, a typical band. And you know, and like Mike, and their car broke down, and it broke down in this back road town in Colorado. And
why did that want to happen?
And this is in the late 67 or, you know, in that 67 range, and then they go to a garage and they don't have the part, and it's going to take 4 days to get it mailed from San Francisco or wherever they're getting it mailed from. And Mike said that within a couple hours of being there, the vibe got real weird, bad. And Yusef just, I mean, I guess the car was still drivable, and Yusef was like, let's get the heck out of here. And they tore out of there.
Go.
And those cats were on their, you know, in their trucks, hightailing it,
driving behind them,
right behind them, man.
Yeah.
I mean, did that happen to you guys? I mean,
I can tell you.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, no, not directly. I mean, you know, we would stop off at some towns where that in that particular instance that never really happened. we got stopped a few times by state police and things like that. Those are pretty scary moments. But just to finish my story about Lincoln.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
When Lincoln became co-ed, there was a new sense of urgency because now there were young women on that campus.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was a dry place before that.
Yeah, and we just couldn't imagine.
Yeah, right.
Having to undergo that kind of traumatic experience. The 18, 19-year-old girl, having to experience somebody driving through campus, shooting up the place.
Oh, wow.
And what if someone was hurt? Yeah. So we decided that we were going to set up a kind of a little cadre to go looking for these guys who might be thinking about coming to our campus.
The cats from Maryland you're talking about.
Yeah, from the convention.
Got it.
From the Klan convention. We didn't see any. But, we didn't see any. And that was a good thing because that would have been ugly. But, and from what I can tell, it never happened again. I mean, when I was there, it never happened again. I think we made it clear that we weren't actually going to tolerate it no matter what it took. And I think that often those guys are, I think that they're some of the most cowardly people.
Well, they're cowardly. They're
traveling in bunches. You know what I mean? And it's like I've never seen it be like a one-on-one situation. Go try to hang. Just go try to hang me by yourself, and see what happens. Come at me with no weapon and just your bare hands and try to see if you can get me up on a tree. No, it's always got to be 30 or 40 of them, armed, dragging somebody out of their house.
And I think it's still going on today.
Yeah, it's still going on. It's never stopped. Man. When does it happen? A guy behind a car, runs down a woman. What is that? That make you a badass?
No, I mean it's just this has been cosmic and you've been dropping so much knowledge on people and people are having a ball listening to it. I just can you again, Charlie Neville's been part of the stream of consciousness on this broadcast, and again he wound up in Angola prison. James Black was there at the time, the great New Orleans drummer. Charlie got busted for 2 joints. All right.
Yes.
5 years. He spent 5 years doing hard labor. White Cats in there had a country and western band. The Black Cats had a bebop band. Anyway, the point is, I want you to talk about, it's a legend. It's on Secrets, the album Secrets, Gil Scott-Heron, Brian Jackson, produced by Brian Jackson, Gil Scott-Heron. Can you talk about that song and the genesis of that song, and if in fact you guys went down and checked that place out?
We didn't go down. We didn't even really know too much about it until we received a letter from Gary Tyler's mother. Right. Gary Tyler was a young man when he was imprisoned in Angola, Louisiana, accused of shooting a young white teenager, who was among a group of other young white men who was surrounding a school bus full of black kids.
Yeah, of course, the cowards at work again with their massive numbers of people.
Yeah, and somebody was shot, put him in jail. He did the time. He was he was 16 when he was sentenced to life, I think. I'm not sure, but but I can tell you that he spent 40 years in prison. He was only just released last year.
Really?
Yeah. He spent 40 years in Angola.
And no one's really sure if he even did anything.
No, we're sure that he didn't.
He didn't do anything. Okay, good. This is important. Okay.
Yeah, he was on the bus. He didn't have a weapon, and he was, he was just coerced into, by the police.
Right, of course.
He was just kind of corralled. Yeah, he was just corralled in and out of the judicial system, like right into Angola. His mother wrote to us and said, "Can you please do something? Maybe you could write a song, or maybe you could just talk about it at your shows, or I don't know. What is there I don't know what you can do, but
right.
If there is anything, could you please? Would you please say something about it?" And so we did that song. Angola still wrote the lyrics to that song, Angola, Louisiana. And it's so appropriate because Angola, Louisiana has been the home of so much injustice at the hands of the judicial system. And so many people down there have been imprisoned, wrongfully imprisoned. And it's probably the place with some of the worst possible living conditions that you can imagine.
So you haven't been to the prison, but you've been to Angola itself.
No, I haven't been to Angola.
Okay, there's just people coming back talking to you about the conditions down there.
Yes, and there's a lot written about Angola. A few years back, there was a huge protest over the ventilation air conditioning system, which did not exist. If you've ever, I haven't been to Angola, but I have been to Louisiana, and I can tell you that in the summertime, Louisiana, you being in a box with no air conditioning is enough to kill you.
Absolutely. Hey, dude, Tucson's 105, man, every day. I'm with you, man. It's so subhuman. It's ridiculous. It's not justice for all, man.
No, not at all. So,
let me ask you a question. When that song got cut and Arista or whatever, you went on tour, would you guys make a little disclaimer before playing the tune about Gary Tyler?
No, that's actually one of the songs. We didn't do that song a lot.
Really?
To be honest. There were so many songs that people wanted to hear us do. It just there wasn't enough time. There was a lot of songs that we never got a chance to really perform, like a song about Possum Slim.
Dude, I was going to ask you, we're going to have to do part 3 on that, man, because that song, all I listen, it's just like, you're on fire, man. The whole thing is just cooking, man. But that's a live performance. That was one of the few times you played that tune, live.
Yeah, we actually recorded that in the studio. The concept of the album was that we did part of it live and part of it in the studio because, we originally set out to do a studio album, but so many people would tell us, dudes, your albums are great, but but your live performances, what you do in the studio cannot possibly match the fire that you bring in your live performances. You really need to record a live album. And so, we took that advice and we did it. But instead, we decided to do like a double album. So half of it was studio and half of it was live. And so we did our new songs in the studio, and we did our old, the songs that we had already recorded in the studio, we did live. Did
you cats cross paths with Peter Tosh or Bob Marley either?
Yeah, not so much me, but I know Gil had some dealings with Bob.
Really?
Yeah. We ran across each other in New York. I know that. I don't know. I met him briefly, but.
And you guys never went to Jamaica to perform, or I mean, to me, you guys were channeling everything that they were speaking about as well in different poetic terms and music.
Sure.
But
for sure. And, I know that the tour that Gil did with Stevie Wonder, the Happy Birthday tour, for the tour where Stevie was going around campaigning for the creation of a new national holiday to honor Dr. Martin Luther King. Originally, Bob was slated to be on that bill with Stevie when he fell ill, and Gil replaced Bob Stevie replaced Bob with Gil.
Unbelievable. So they're basically kind of like 80, 81 in that range, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I remember doing it. I wasn't there, but I know that during that tour is when John Lennon was assassinated.
Wow.
And Stevie got the news while they were doing the show. I think it was in Madison Square Garden, as a matter of fact. And that was
wow. Listen, man. Brian Jackson now is a new father of twins. They're almost, I guess, 2 years old.
Almost, yeah.
Yep.
Almost.
You got kids graduating from college,
just graduated from high school.
High school.
I have a son who graduated, who has graduated years ago. He graduated, maybe 5 to 6 years ago. He graduated from Oxford University. Yeah.
Well, this is the next. We just, we rocked it out today. But next time I'm in the city, if you're around, I'd love to do. I know you see my Facebook Live interviews with Gadsden and Warren Smith and all these cats, and
of course.
And so I think it's high time that next time I'm back east, if you're around, we should connect and do something like that.
We should.
All right.
We should definitely do that. I'm looking forward to it, Jake.
Much love to you, man. It'll take me a minute to get. I'm out of town for a while, but I'll get this up online, and I really have.
Me too, actually. I'm going to. Believe it or not, I'm going to Portland next week.
Oregon or Maine? Oregon or Maine? Oregon?
Or Oregon.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I was just there.
She
have a
just
ball.
had a new kid.
What's that?
Thank you. She just had a new kid, so we're going there to, we're bringing the whole family over there just to meet the new.
Great vibes there, man. Have a ball, and then let's just stay in touch, man. And thank you for enlightening people and inspiring people. I often think that in today's world, this is something you can think about, or maybe you have thought about. But all these groups that are disparate, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, all this stuff. The missing component is music. There's no music at these events. Angela Davis
used something.
Yeah,
that is so true.
Yeah,
that is really true, man. It's something that this is the glue that kind of binds us. Music is the glue that brings us together. We need that unity. We all have our issues, and we all have our issues, but we have to come together, and it's the only way that it'll work. Divide and conquer will work every time, unless we drop all of that. We stop looking at our differences and look at our similarities.
Well, we will pray for that. Be safe. Love your family. And I look forward to connecting again, man. I had a ball. Thank you. Much love to you, brother.
Me too. Much love.
All right. Cheers, brother. All right. Peace.
Peace.
Just another whistle stop with a legendary producer, pianist, and singer, Brian Jackson. I'm off to Boulder. See you all later on the Jake Feinberg Show.